The Exorcist is back with a new installment 50 years after the original came out. I've got my out-of-theater reaction and my spoiler review coming next. Hey everyone, it's the Outlaw John Rocha here with my out-of-theater reaction and spoiler review of The Exorcist Believer. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, how can you do an out-of-theater reaction? You're not actually in the theater. Well, my theater is 3 minutes from my house, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do a spoiler review to this thing, I'm going to come to the house and do it real quick here in the Outlaw Nation offices. Hope you don't mind, but I can put up a theater aesthetic if you want me to the next time I do it. But yeah, so coming out of this movie, I'll tell you right now, right off the bat, I actually liked it. I did not anticipate that I would. Heard a lot of bad things, and I wasn't the biggest fan of David Gordon Green's Halloween movies. I thought there were some good, brutal, scary, intense scenes, but I didn't think they held together as well as they should have. So I walked into this one going, you know, I wonder if this one's going to be terrible. Am I going to make it through it? That kind of thing. And I have to say, I found this to be eminently watchable. It's not the greatest thing ever. Certainly isn't as good as the original, but I liked what they were trying to do with this as a new approach, which is a much more introspective, thoughtful approach about religion, about faith, not just in your God or gods, but faith in humanity and what that can do to you if you break that. And also the idea of accepting other people's points of views, other people's faith, other people's rituals, other people's processes in order to deal with exorcism. I thought there was a really powerful message here about not being selfish, about not shutting yourself away from society, and about connecting with humanity and the power that can come from that and where it can lead to. So I was really surprised by that. There's not a lot of scares in this one. There's certainly a decent amount, but it's nowhere near what you had seen in the first movie or in other subsequent Exorcist films. As I said, it's a much more introspective, thoughtful approach to this, and it takes its time laying the groundwork for what it's trying to do here. I think David Gordon Green did a nice job directing this one as well. Does it get lost a little bit in the middle? Yes. And is the ending kind of a mishmash when everyone gets in the room? Sure. But I think they were strong enough in laying the groundwork for everything. So when we have these moments in the third act of connection, these moments of decision making, they've done enough to let you know why these characters are doing the things that they're doing and giving you enough backstory on certain characters that are important in that room that you accept what's happening and you go along with it for sure. Could it have been cleaned up? Could it have been a little sharper? Absolutely. But in the end, I think this is much more watchable than some of these people are claiming. And I think some people hold on to this first Exorcist movie a little too tightly because this wasn't a bad effort at all. And I think people get snobbish about their horror films, and it's tough to see for sure. All right, well, let's get into my overall review of this thing. Let's get into my spoiler review. And if you haven't seen it, this is a spoiler review. From this point forward, I will be spoiling things, so just want to let you know about this. So right off the bat, I think the acting here is really well done. I think Leslie Odom Jr. does a nice job. He's handed a lot of emotional things to deal with from the opening there when he loses his wife and how that goes about in that earthquake in Haiti and what it leads to with his daughter. And of course, the reveal at the end, which we really didn't get hinted at, but made sense to kind of hold off on that fact until they dropped it in that moment between him and her possessed daughter here, who is played by newcomer LIDYA JEWETT, the character of Angela. They drop it there, this idea that he didn't want her, he chose his wife. So they let you kind of wonder which way he went until that moment, and so he has to choose her. And he's a guy who's lost his faith, and I kind of like what he's doing here in certain moments. He's not overt about it. He's not getting in people's face about their faith. He's just pushing back on it because he's lost so much. He thinks that there is no point in believing in God because God has kind of punished him. So you could argue that's a little bit of the devil, at least in the construct of the film. I'm not saying that as my own personal lecture, but in the construct of the film, you could argue that he is a guy who is walking away from all of this, and this is kind of what comes to visit him to make him reconnect with society, to make him reconnect and understand and ask for forgiveness from his daughter and ask for forgiveness from himself, which I think is a really powerful thing. And I think LIDYA JEWETT, for the amount of screen time that she gets, you buy that connection she has with her father, you buy the emotions that are going on. When she gets possessed, it's pretty scary and brutal, and she does a fantastic job showing you the pain of all of that, but also how scary that would actually be. Ellen Burstyn, it's nice to see her come back here as Chris MacNeil. She does a nice job. I don't 100% like what they did with her character, but you got to understand this is a woman of age. How much do you want to put her through? And so, but I liked her being back, and she, this is a well-respected, decades-long great actress. And so her coming in, when she comes in, which is about 45 minutes into the movie, really solidifies the movie and puts some foundation down for the rest of us to jump from. It's much needed foundation, I think, that she provides, although I don't like that they kind of sideline her through the back half of the movie, which we'll get to in a little bit here. I think Norbert Leo Butz and Jennifer Nettles. I know Norbert Leo Butz from Bloodlines, and also I've heard he's a fantastic Broadway actor. And Jennifer Nettles, I think, does a nice job. You know, I like Sugarland, thought she was a really good singer, but I wasn't sure about the acting stuff, and I think she does a nice job for the limited screen time that she gets here. And Catherine, who is played by Olivia O'Neill, also her connection with Angela, that's established well. They certainly feel like friends. But Ann Dowd is who really stands out for me. She is so good with showing the pain and the weight that she carries as a nurse and all the things that she experiences as a nurse, but then finding out, of course, as the course of the film goes along, this is a spoiler review, that she's a failed nun, that she wanted to be a nun, but then she gave in to the temptation of physical pleasure, had a baby, had the abortion, has been carrying that guilt around forever. So when that pops up in that interaction with the possessed Angela, I think it really carries weight for her to be in the room leading the exorcism, because she's also trying to come to terms with what she's done and also find some resolution for herself. Well, let's get into the story here. I like the story. I like the idea of a man who's lost his faith, because he had to choose between his daughter and his wife, and he chose his wife, but they ended up saving his daughter, maybe because his wife was too far along to be saved by the time it all went down. And so his connection to his daughter is really strong, really powerful. She's the connection to his wife who had passed on, and so he cares about her and monitors Angela, but clearly you can tell, although he has love there's a little bit of distance. It's not over, it's not really like, let me hang a lantern on it, but you can tell there's a little bit of distance between them. So there's some stuff to figure out, some resolution to have in their relationship. And I like that we follow him as he confronts these people in the town who are into religion, and that becomes a big part of what he confronts is people's approach to this kind of stuff. And he's a skeptic initially, and I love his interactions with Chris MacNeil when she's like, oh yeah, being a skeptic is fine, but it's only going to take you so far. You got to find something else after that, because everyone's a skeptic initially, but then how do you come to terms with all the stuff that's happening once you get past your skepticism? At some point, something's got to take its place, and you got to come to terms with that. And so I like that we go on that journey with him and his relationship with Angela. I like that there's drama between Norbert Leo Butz and Jennifer Nettles. What did your daughters do? What was your daughter into? So naturally, you're going to go through the course of those things. I will say my criticism in that situation is I think it should have been pushed farther. I think there was more to explore here between the couple and him, and I think there could have been more drama and more tension. Of course, a white couple, a black man, what is that? A black father? Let's take a look at that. Let's explore it. Of course, you've got a bunch of white men behind this thing, so maybe they felt they didn't have quite the cultural intelligence to navigate all of that, which I could understand. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that in their interaction. Didn't mean you didn't have to choose a side, just kind of showcase how that might pop out in a certain way. So I like that they did that. I like that they had the differences. I just would have liked to have seen it stressed a little bit more. I love that they bring in Chris MacNeil when they bring her in. It makes sense. Ann Dowd seems like the kind of person, her character Ann, would have actually read that book, and they make that canon that she's written a book about the situation with her daughter, with Reagan, and we hear about the situation with Reagan, that they haven't talked, and they've kind of cut each other off, or she's cut her off from her because she's mad that she wrote the book, and that happens. People sometimes do extricate themselves from relationships with friends or family who write books based on them because they did it without their permission or over their permission, even when they asked them and they said no, they went ahead and did it anyway. So I like that you've got that roaming through her, and Ellen Burstyn really plays that love for her so well, so that when we get to the end and we have that moment with Linda Blair, which I was so happy we had that moment with Linda Blair, it's very earned and great reactions from both of them. And Linda Blair looking fantastic 50 years later, looks so good coming in there, holding the hands and feeling that connection again. It was so great to see Reagan and Chris again on the screen. The negative, though, for me in that situation with Chris MacNeil is having Catherine stab her eyes out. I was really mad about that because I don't understand. How can I say this? I can real world understand, but I don't story understand why you would bring someone back like Ellen Burstyn, who from what I've read, they had to really convince her to be a part of this. And then you have her be in it for about 5 minutes where she's not blind and she goes into a house. Now, why would she go into a possessed house when she's seen what a possessed Reagan can do physically to people from her experiences? Why would she go one-on-one with a possessed young girl as old as she is in a room? It doesn't make sense. And so when the girl Catherine pokes out her eyes, possessed, of course, by the demon, I was like, this is kind of a cheap way to sideline her because you don't want to have her in the final exorcism. You're going to have her in a hospital bed doing the things that she's doing. Now, does she play it well when she's blind and all of that? Of course, she's a master actress. But I think it was a mistake of a decision to not have her in there. Even if you just wheel her in there blind, that might even help more if she was blind because your other senses are hyped up a little bit more so you can sense things. So maybe she could have been an assistant in a different way with different senses that I think would have worked as well. So just a shame to see that she was sidelined. It's a big negative of mine for sure. I do feel like the first act does a nice job of laying the groundwork for everything, establishing everything that you need. But in the second act, it starts to stumble a little bit and put these things together. They're moving quickly to like, oh yeah, we're just going to commit them and we're just going to do this and we're just going to do that. And this idea, it just kind of is confounding a little bit. And we have this possessed Catherine in the house and she doesn't kill anybody. She doesn't injure anybody. They're all just kind of messed up. The two little children and Jennifer Nettles are in the kitchen praying. Norbert Leo Butz is out there as the dad sitting outside the house. So it just seemed odd that was something that could have had more danger to it, more violence to it, and they didn't dial into that a little bit more. Some deaths would have been nice. Some stakes would have been nice. I know we get the priest death at the end, which is good. I like the priest situation. Clearly making a commentary story-wise here about the church, about systems in power not helping the working class. Certainly there's a little bit of a subtle message going on there because they just want to put everything into a room, put it away, say it's going to get worked on. You know, your children are messed up. We got to put them in this mental ward and what have you. And the church is like, no, we can't do the exorcism. It'll look bad on us. So there's all of that going on. So you see clearly a commentary about how systems let working people down. So I think that's in there as a subtle commentary. It's not overt, and I hang a lantern on it, but I think it is there as a little bit of a commentary. And as we lead into the exorcism, which is the 30 to 45 minutes, the last 30 to 45 minutes of the movie, I thought it worked really well. I mean, picking up all these different people who have had their different points of views, and certainly his friend who's the boxing coach, I think he's the weakest of the characters in the film overall because we don't do a lot to understand why he's got this connection with the black woman who has her faith and her stuff from the ground and all of that. We don't understand how he would have the connection with her. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that if we're going to bring them all into the room and have them have a little bit of power. And apparently he has keys to the guy's house. He is in Victor's house there and surprises him, which is a little bit of a weird situation as well. So I think would have liked it. But the overall message here that people of different faiths can come together to banish evil out of a situation, I thought was a good message overall. Was it clumsy? Was it a bit awkward at times putting them in the room and how this all came about? Sure, I would argue, sure, they could have done a little better job of establishing that a little more firmly so that you're anticipating the showdown. You're ready for this showdown. Could have done a little bit more to ramp it up. But once they're in the room, seeing all the different people not judging each other, but like tossing out their ways to kind of call on God to help the situation, I thought worked really well. And I do like the story decision to have the dad who has been the guy who was questioning all of this, who can't deal with all of this. Catherine's father, when Catherine is coming down the aisle doing the body and the blood, he screams at her to stop. He doesn't care. Like, he doesn't approach her with care. He approaches her with embarrassment. You're embarrassing us to the church, right? And that might also be a little bit of a commentary. Oh my God, you're growing up as a young woman. Don't draw attention to yourself. Stay this way. Sometimes fathers can be quite possessive of their daughters or judgmental of their daughters if they draw attention to themselves or embarrass them to the church. There's certainly a lot of that in the church. So I like that there was an element of that with him. He doesn't want to take his shoes off when they're doing the exorcism initially. And then when he comes in, you think he's committed to it. he's the one that gets fooled by the devil logically because he's the weakest of all of them in terms of his faith and his real belief. It's more show than it is actual faith. And then, so he's the one that gets tricked by the devil and chooses Catherine. That makes sense because the devil played a trick. He's the devil. Of course he's going to play a trick. Or these demons are part of the devil. They're going to play a trick. And his daughter gets banished to hell, which I'm sure in the sequel and then the third one, we're going to find a way for Catherine to get on out of there for sure. But yeah, this is, I like the way they led to all of that. Yeah, was a little, in the second act and the third act was a little jumbled, wasn't quite as cohesive as you would like it to be. Sure, but it wasn't so like, oh my God, this is stupid. So I think some people are a little snobbish about their horror. I also like that there wasn't a lot of scares in this one. There are some scares, but not a lot. It's not overt. They're not trying to outdo the original or any of the other installments that have come before. I like that they went that route, and I also liked it because in exchange, what replaces it is these introspective conversations amongst all the people involved in this. Conversations about faith, conversations about commitment, conversations about connection. All of that is coursing through this, and I really like how that gets replaced with something much more, how can I say this, much more resonant, I think, for me. And as far as the direction, I thought David Gordon Green did a nice job directing this movie. Certainly got some good performances out of all of these actors, and then did a really good job of laying the groundwork for what you have in the town, right? Establishing the church for what it is, establishing the school for what it is, establishing the mental ward, establishing these other areas of town, the police, all of that is established really well, so you have a good idea of what's happening, what this town's all about, and who are the power players in this town. And so when things start to happen, you can go along with it. Where he puts the camera in certain moments, goes close up, intimate when he needs to. And I like where he takes this and the pacing of this one, and the little flashes of things that we're going to get later, the little flashes of the demon, flashes of hell, just enough to give us an idea of what this is all about and how everything starts to happen. Like once Chris comes into the mix and we hear about Reagan and her connection and all that happened there, things start to move forward a little more quickly, and I like that we got that with him as a director overall. Peter Sattler, David Gordon Green, I thought they did a nice job with the script as well. Sattler and Green, kind of getting it to where it needs to get to. Again, is there better stuff that could have been done in the second act, into the third act, and a little bit in The Exorcism? Sure, but it wasn't so bad that I would want to ding it for it. I get what they were going for. I think the performances carried me a lot of the way into the emotional place I needed to be in order to have some kind of stakes coming through for The Exorcism. And I also think, I didn't mention this in the direction section here just talked about, but David Gordon Green's direction of The Exorcism I thought worked really well as well. He knew where to move the camera, where to show everybody, where to show the two girls. When Victor is shot across the room by his daughter there, and he witnesses Angela rise up in the light, all of that is awesome. The blood coming out onto the ceiling. When Catherine spits out the black gunk from her mouth, all of that, there's a real nice power in the direction of and the framing that's going on that I thought really worked as well. So overall, I give this film 3.5 cowboy hats out of 5 cowboy hats. I would have liked to have liked it a little bit more than I did, and I do recognize the issues in the second act and the third act, but they weren't enough to take me out of the film. And I think The Exorcism does a nice job of saving the film by the end for me personally. So that's enough to give it 3.5 cowboy hats and to recommend it to you all to put away some of the noise and the negativity. Go and see it for yourself. Make your own judgment and see if you liked it. I know David Gordon Green's approach to horror is not everybody's approach to horror, but for what he did in the film, I think it worked and I liked it and I want to see more in the sequel. I dug the story and the approach, a man questioning his faith and coming back to his faith and understanding that shutting himself off is not the path to happiness. You have to connect. You have to take chances. You have to play a hand. That's the game of life. And yeah, you're going to lose sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's about connecting again. It's about finding that community. And I think that message is a message that we all need to hear today. This idea of coming together and valuing humanity. Who knew that was bubbling below the surface of The Exorcist believer? I certainly didn't. So, well, for those of you who've seen it, let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. For those of you who didn't go see it but still wanted to see my spoiler review, and now maybe you're going to go see it. If you do go see it, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media, and more than anything, please subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you see when dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. There's a sequel and a third film coming, I believe, so get ready for all of that, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review and out of theater reaction here from the Outlaw Nation. Take care.